So look, I was going to just start. If you've got questions, chuck them in the chat and I'll do my best to keep up with the chat in the way that I normally do. Otherwise, I'll just start running my gums and we'll see where we go from there. I didn't know you were British in the States. Oh no, I'm not in the States. Somebody else in the chat said it's 4 a.m. I'm in Britain. So yeah, Australia, good to have you in here. The first thing I wanted to talk about is something that I think shows up quite a lot in a lot of the content that I posted out. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about it. In like the healing space or the spirituality, can't wait to do our breath. Oh yeah, it's a good one, by the way, Heidi. Yeah. And so yeah, in the healing space or the kind of spirituality space, one thing that I think I notice happens a lot, and I say this, by the way, because I feel like I've done it quite a lot in the past. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about that I notice, I think often I notice out of my own experience and how I've done it before myself, right? But I notice that I feel like there's a lot of people pleasing that goes on, that's being dressed up as spirituality, that is actually still in a lot of ways rooted in self-abandonment. Now, what I mean by that is I see a lot of people talking about the whole, like, always love people no matter what. I see a lot of people talking about how you should try and see the good in everybody. And I think you should try and see the good in everybody. But I also think you should make sure that you see the bad in people as well. And I think it's a mistake to believe that healing is getting to a place where you're able to love everybody, right? And you can see the good in everybody and all of that stuff. I actually think true healing is when you see somebody for exactly as they are and exactly as they're going to show up in your life. And then you make a judgment and a decision on whether they get to be in your life or part of your life or not. And I think that's the important thing. This whole seeing the good in everybody is probably getting you hurt, because what you're actually doing is only seeing the good in people and not seeing everything else. And I think it's like a common thing that's used. It's a common way of bypassing is to bring this, like, if I create this spiritual character that I become that loves everybody no matter what, right? Then actually I get to carry on people pleasing. I don't need to do any work on myself. And I have this new character who loves everybody no matter what. And I'm still self-abandoning and carrying out the same patterns of behavior that I once did, but it's under a new persona. And so I think I see that a lot. And I think something that we should do is normalize doing the healing work and doing the self work without having to overly change the way that you show up, right? I think you can measure, in fact, I think you can measure somebody's journey and healing and how far along they are into it if they can still just speak in normal everyday language and don't have to consistently show externally in every other way that they're doing the healing work, right? Or have to prove it by using the correct terminology and all stuff like that. Like, let's normalize making it normal. Do you know what I mean? Did I see some questions come in here? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your practical approach to healing. Like, that's the thing, you know, like, some of it can seem so unreachable online because it's like sold in this really like funny way. And this is the thing, right? All of the healing modalities that we can do all have healing properties, right? You know, you have like ice baths, which are big. You have walking with no shoes and socks on, which is great. Love that, right? The latest one that everybody's doing is taping your mouth shut at night so that you just breathe in through your nose. And all of these things are great, and they all have healing properties to them. And you can do all of them, but if you've got shit going on in your life that you don't want to look at and you don't want to address and you don't want to deal with, then it's going to be like obsolete. You can ice bath every morning, right? But if you're in a job that you hate and you're on the fucking breadline, then a ice bath ain't going to cut it. So a lot of those things like modalities are great, and I love them all, by the way. I love them all, and I think it's lovely to have a plethora of things that you can try. The problem is that, and we do it with meditation and breath work even, yeah? Like, you can do all of that stuff, but if you're doing it to avoid the thing that you need to work on, then you're doing it to avoid the thing that you need to work on. And I see that as like a big thing that goes on. You can give someone compassion and still decide they don't deserve a seat at your table. And I think that's the real important thing. Compassion and consequence can coexist. And what happens is that people think that to be compassionate means that, oh, someone's done something really bad to me. I'm not allowed to be upset. If I'm spiritual and healing, I need to be able to compassionately look at why they did it. Yeah, like the healing work is to be able to see that people show up in a certain way. Absolutely. But it's not to go that right down that route of like, you know, it's not their fault. They did it because of their trauma. This is a thing, by the way. I hear this a lot with the stuff that I do for toxic parents. Yeah. People say to me, I got to a stage and I realized they are like, you know, let me rephrase that. People often say when it comes to the toxic parent stuff, I often hear people say, when I say, look, if you need to cut them out, then that's where you've reached. Or, you know, if they're horrible all the time, then they're horrible all the time. And people go, yeah, but what about if they're like it because of their trauma? And I think, well, most people that are horrible are probably like it because of something that happened to them, but it doesn't mean that it's acceptable. It doesn't mean that you have to put up with it and allow somebody to continue to abuse you or be horrible to you just because the reason that they did it, you have to have compassion for. Eventually you might find compassion for it. Great. That's great. But it doesn't mean that you continue to allow the abuse. It doesn't mean that you haven't done the work. I've had people come on my shit and say, you know, you need to do the work. Rather than just cutting people out, you need to do the work. And I'm like, no, you need to do the fucking work and realize that horrible people do exist. And it is not doing the work to allow abuse to continue. That's not what healing is. Not in my book. Let's have a look. Have we got any other questions in here? Some patties of healing are just dark and working through tough stuff. Yeah, absolutely. There's a Q&A bit here. Do you find some of the healing mantras work in the negative, such as you are projecting your anger or frustration, which negates you having an honest conversation about how you have made me feel? It's a really good question. Do you find some of the healing? By the way, the best place to put a question is in the Q&A thing. Yeah, if you've got a proper question, then let me put them in the Q&A and I'll be able to pick them out easier. Do you find some of the healing mantras work in the negative, such as you are projecting your anger or frustration? Listen, let me tell you something now. A lot of toxic people are showing up disguised as spiritual people or disguised as healing people. A lot of fucking narcissists are showing up talking about narcissism online. Let me be clear about that from the start, yeah? And then what a lot of these people do is they use spiritual ideals to try and control you. So you got to be careful with that, yeah? You know, if somebody has made you angry, if somebody's done something nasty to you, horrible to you, and it's made you angry, you should be angry, right? There is a reason you're angry. Anger is to motivate you to do what you need to stop the bad thing happening to you again. What these toxic and abusive people will do, there's toxic, abusive, spiritual fuckers that show up out there, yeah? They will reactive abuse, they'll use reactive abuse, so they'll do something horrible to you, and then when you're angry, they'll be like, oh, whoa, I think you're just projecting your stuff onto me, you know? Have you done some work around this so that it maybe doesn't make you angry? Like, no, man. I don't need to do work around anything to stop somebody who's being horrible to me, making me angry. It's supposed to make you angry. And this is some of the, like, let's call it the dark side of this space, yeah, is that people are using the language to manipulate you, to make you feel like you're crazy. You got to watch that shit. You got to watch that stuff. Because look, my belief is that you should feel all of the way that you feel and then maybe explore why you're feeling like it. And if you're being abused and if somebody's being fucking horrible to you and you're reacting badly to it, you're reacting correctly to it, right? Because they're being horrible to you. So if then somebody's like tries to make you feel like you're bad and like you shouldn't have your emotions, then they're wrong, aren't they? That's what I think. Anyway. do scapegoats go on to become the goat? How often does this happen? And is it why they are targeting? Yeah, look, it's complex. So somebody saying, do scapegoats go on to become the goat? Somebody said this on one of my posts recently. Said scapegoats go on to be one of the goats, to be the goat. And then somebody said, which I thought was brilliant, they said, yeah, like a mountain goat, because a mountain goat just keeps persevering until it got to the top. And I thought, oh, that's good. But the other person, I think, meant the greatest of all time. The black sheep, look, you end up being the black sheep of the family because you call out the fucking toxicity, yeah? So you end up being the black sheep because you call out the toxicity. And you call out the toxicity because you've begun to wake up to this stuff. And rather than looking at what's actually causing the dysfunction, right, where the root of all of this is coming from, which is normally one person's toxicity, people would rather ostracize you and make you the black sheep, right, than look at the toxicity. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean, by the way, that all of the people are to blame. You know, if it's your siblings that have like made you the black sheep, right? You've got to remember, sometimes good people are trapped in abuse, and they are trapped in that abusive system and aren't yet necessarily able to come out of that abusive system, right? And so they just do what people do when they're stuck in an abusive system, which is ostracize the people that want them to get away from it. Think of somebody in an abusive relationship. They will often cut themselves off from the people that try and help them get away from the abusive relationships. So this happens in family systems as well, which is why it's not always as cut and dry as just, well, cut all your siblings off as well, because it's not that simple, because they're trapped in this abusive system as well, right? So I do think, though, however, if you become the black sheep and you continue to follow that path, you continue to seek truth, no matter how upsetting the truth is, right? I do believe you'll go on to be the GOAT, yeah? You'll go on to be the one who does well in your life. And I also recognize that if it's, say, a toxic parent that we're dealing with here, it's not just as simple as necessarily, although it might be what you need to do, as simple as just saying, well, they're all horrible because none of them are seeing the abuse. We have to remember at the core of abuse is abuse. So it's power and it's coercion, right? And so we can't always necessarily just blame everybody in that way. When I was a sick child, bees used to protect me from abusers. My question is it normal for bees to do that? I've never heard of that before, I'm afraid. I've been no contact for over 5 years, but recently found that my nan has been unwell. I reached out in just a phone call and considered going back, but it was the same bullshit as before. I guess my question is, do you think it's ever worth going back due to a relative possibly dying? So if you've gone no contact, right, I think that let me just think about this a second, because I don't want to just throw out an answer to you. I think you should take any no contact with a parent, you should take on a sort of case by case basis. I think you should do what's right for you, right? If there's a relative that you need to contact your parent because you want to find out about the relative, and you reach out, this isn't about failure. This isn't about doing this shit well or anything like that. It's about navigating a really horrible, difficult situation that you didn't ask for and you didn't put yourself in. So I think you should always take it by situation basis and do what feels right in that moment. And you're allowed to change your mind, right? You're allowed to change your mind. If you've got a toxic, horrible, abusive parent that's been like it, that you sort of recognize and feel they're never ever going to change, you didn't ask for this, right? It's not your fault. And so you navigate it the best way that you can. Because there's no give and take here. This is the point. And this is what people that, don't seem to understand. Some people that show up on my posts, oddly showing up on a post about toxic parents to say, to talk about, I don't know what they talk about, parents that aren't toxic. It's like, why are you here? Why are you on the post? So yeah, look, I think you should take it by a case basis and do what's right for you. There's no right or wrong here, and there's no should. I don't think you should do anything. I think you should have compassion for yourself and navigate it the best way that you know how. And if you start, if you make the decision to make contact again and you find yourself going down that path again, and then you find yourself realizing that it's the same shit as last time, and you want to pull back out, then you pull back out. Yeah, you're the victim here, right? You're not the person that's toxic or being abusive. And I think this is what's really important to understand when we're talking about toxic parents, right? I'm not talking about parents who make mistakes and get it wrong and messed up loads of times. That is just parents, right? Toxic parents, when I talk about toxic parents, right, I'm talking about people who are consistently, all of the time, horrible, just particularly to you, the child, yeah? Always. They're usually bloody lovely to everybody else and anyone else that they come across, they make themselves likable, but you see the truth. When the door closed, they are consistently horrible to you all of the time, right? And this is why I say I don't care why they like it. I don't care why. They never reflect. There's never any give and take. And the times when it does feel like they're doing something for you, and you start to think, you open your heart that tiny bit again for them, because, maybe they're doing this, and then bam, somewhere along the line, you realize why they fucking did it. And it was nothing to do with you and everything to do with themselves. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about toxic parents. And it's wild how many people can't see that. And I guess we can't expect them to see that. This is the thing. You can't expect them to see it because you wouldn't believe it if you didn't see it. What we can expect of people, I believe, is that they fucking hear somebody's experience and don't chime in and start trying to change that experience. That's the problem. That's the stuff that I call out. How do you handle friends who are always telling you how you should feel or telling you that you are being defensive when you don't agree? Yeah, well, this is the problem. This is one of the societal issues that we've got, is that people don't listen to people that are struggling with a toxic parent and hear the scenario. And listen, that's why I think a small circle is a good circle. Then you can have a bigger social circle, but friends should be a small circle who are willing to listen to your experience fully. I have cut both toxic parents out of my life, but really miss my younger siblings. How do I deal with my parent turning my siblings against me for seeing through the bullshit? It's lonely out here. Yeah, man. I mean, I can't imagine what that must be like. You finally put yourself and your well-being first. You finally do that. And then as a result of doing that, you lose other people. And listen, there will be some people in this situation, and that's okay for them to say this and do this because that's their experience, who just say, forget about them, who cares? But I think there's a lot of bypassing there. And I think that's why this is a horrible situation, right? Because what do? You go back and you allow that toxicity in your life again, just to have a relationship with your siblings who have turned against you because of what your parents saying. It's hard, man. It's hard. And I'm not going to pretend I have an answer. But what I would say is there's community here, right? There's people that understand and will hear you. Abusive narc mother has got back in touch, left a voicemail pleading for my help because she is having panic attacks. For me to offer genuine help will mean making myself vulnerable, which has never worked out well in the past. Is it normal? Is it morally okay to not to help protect myself? Yes, it is morally. Okay, let's do this. So your toxic mum has got back in touch with you after you've been no contact to say they're having panic attacks and they want your help. Let's just for a second pretend it wasn't your mum. Let's say it was a friend. What would the answer be? Probably no. Let's say it was an ex-partner that's got back in touch with you to say they're having panic attacks. They were toxic and abusive when you were in the relationship, but they're having panic attacks. Would it be morally wrong to say no? No, it wouldn't. I wouldn't blame you for saying no. So now it's your mum. It adds layers of complexity. Absolutely, I think it does. It makes it way more difficult for you. I do not think it is morally wrong to say, no, I'm not helping. You've had your chance and I tried everything I can. I don't think it's morally wrong. And I also don't think it's morally wrong if you go, you know what? This is too much. I'm going to try and help. and then you may end up getting burnt again, right? I think you should do what feels right, and you should try and love yourself and be as compassionate for yourself as you can as you navigate through whatever decision you make. I don't think you should make any decision. I think you should do whatever feels right, and the best way to navigate what is a shit and horrible, difficult situation that you didn't ask for. And I know I say those things all of the time that you didn't ask for and all that stuff, and I repeat them all of the time because they're true. All right? So it's hard. And I think probably deep down, you probably know that, you know, it might not end well if you go back there. But if you do, and you think, you know what, I've got to try and help because it's my mum and that's what I'm going to, then you do that. Then you do that, you know? And you love yourself and have compassion for yourself for why you made that decision. You know, I love to quote one of my heroes, Gabor Mate, says, I'm a human being who in that moment didn't have a better way to soothe my pain, so I'm going to forgive myself. And I think when you look at how horrible and difficult and messy the world is by itself, actually, I don't think the world is horrible and messy. Horrible is too big a word. If you look how difficult and messy the world can sometimes be to navigate on itself, then you chuck in a toxic and abusive parent into that mix, then I think you should forgive yourself as much as you can for whatever decisions you make. That's my answer. How do you handle supporting someone through a serious illness without losing yourself? Especially with someone who has historically been manipulative and sucks your energy. I can't walk away from someone who's going through a serious illness. Yeah, look, you're going to have to, this is the thing, if you can't walk away, and that's your prerogative, and I certainly wouldn't blame you for that, and again, you know, everybody has to do what they have to do. But you're going to have to up your game in other areas, right? What are you doing to love yourself? What are you doing to support yourself? Are you actively looking for things that might help? And this is where, to contradict myself slightly, this is where the things like ice baths, meditation, breath work, and all of that, you're not somebody who's avoiding emotions. You're saying, here's are the difficult emotions based on what I'm experiencing, right? That's when you go out and you search for modalities. Try and find community somewhere, be it online, or be it with your friends, right? You need to be sharing about what you're going through with people that understand. Find somewhere to do that. And then find some modalities that are just for you, based for you and around you, because you're going through a really, really difficult time with somebody who's triggering you left, right, and center, and then they're going through a real difficult illness. Power to you for doing it and for getting through it and finding a way through it and navigating it in the way that you are. Hats off to you and power to you. And try and make sure that you're putting some of that work in to support yourself. That's what I would say. Does the toxic parent target you with the goal that you self-destruct? Look, I think the toxic parent, right? I think the toxic parent, in most cases, is doing what they can to survive with the shit that they've got. That's what I think. And I think they are, you know, what's happened to them is that they're reacting on it to put themselves at the center of the world and fuck everybody else. And that's how they live. And anybody that doesn't feed into the manipulation, or anybody that gets hurt as a result of them finding a way to meet their needs, is collateral damage, and they don't care. I actually am not sure in most cases that toxic and horrible people set out to be toxic and horrible to people or to their kids, right? But I think that that's what they do. And I think they do it because of their own shit. I don't think it's anything to do with anything else. So what I would say is that there are sadistic people out there. And when you start to get into that level, when you're talking about sadistic people, they are just hurting you for no other reason than to hurt you. And I think a lot of toxic parents are like that. And that's fucking horrible, man. So I don't, you know, this is why I don't want to pretend to have answers to everything, but I can be curious about it and explore it with people. There's no more in the Q&A, so what I'm going to do is just come back in the chat function here. You'll have times you want to go back on no contact and have a list of your phone of the reasons why you went no contact in the first place. Yeah, I really like that, you know, like making sure that you become aware of that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you can do around the nervous system as well. That can be really, really useful. And just understanding what state you're in and why you might be in that state and what that state feels like. But I can't really go into it here properly because you need a sort of proper session for that. When your parent constantly tells you that you have ruined their lives and she often cries and genuinely believes it, how do you know if it's a mental illness or just toxic? Oh, that's a very good question. Your parent constantly tells you that you have ruined their lives and she often cries and genuinely believes it. How do you know if it's a mental illness or it's just toxic? Does it matter? Is my answer. And what relevance does it hold? Because this comes up a lot. People say to me, you know, but they might be like they are because of mental illness. Well, that's true of every bad person. Paedophiles might be like they are because of mental illness. They might be. Would you let them near your kids? No. Right? I think a lot of horrible people in the world are horrible because of what happened to them. And that doesn't mean that they get to continue to be abused, right? You can, and I've said this in the past before and I'll say it again, you can have sympathy and compassion and think, it's such a shame you're like this, right? And I can't let this do what it's doing to me. So is it mental illness or are they just toxic? It's a bit of chicken and the egg. Like, are they toxic because they got a mental illness? Probably. And so say it is that they're not toxic, they've just got a really bad mental illness. Then what? Do we just like, well, it's a mental illness, so we have to continue to let them abuse us? Like, that's the thing with it, you know? So yeah, I sort of hope that helps as a reflection. I'm going to do a few more. Estranged from my toxic mother for 10 years. Everyone says she's changed. I crave a mother. Not sure if I should reach out or not. Here's a really good question. Like, a good way of doing this, and I think you should do again what's right. I'm not going to tell you any shoulds here. But it's been 10 years and everybody's telling you that she's changed, right? I always say, flip the question. And so don't ask, what will I gain by going back? Say, by reigniting this connection, what am I saying no to? And by not reigniting the question, what am I saying no, the relationship, what am I saying no to? So if I don't reignite the relationship, I'm saying no to finding out if she's changed and all of that stuff, yeah? If I do go, then I'm saying no to perhaps, and I'm making this up, but you'd have to do it yourself, peace of mind and psychological safety and all that stuff. So if you've got a toxic parent that you've cut out for 10 years, you know as well as I do, just because everyone around them's saying they've changed, it doesn't, you know, they might just be keeping the act up a lot. Do you know what I mean? But it may be that you say to yourself, I couldn't, you know, go to my grave and not have given her this chance. And then in that case, you give the chance. And then, you know what, whatever happens, you'll deal with it. You're strong. You've done 10 years, right? You'll deal with it and you'll navigate whatever comes up as a result. That's what I would say. How do you get over the pain of no contact? I would say, don't try and get over it. I hate that term, right? You're not trying to get over it. You're trying to navigate and work through it. So you're trying to adjust to life as in a situation that you didn't ask for, that's not your fault, and that you can't have much control over. So you're not trying to get over it. You're not trying to reach this podium where you say I've done it, although you might get there one day. You're trying to navigate it and you're trying to live a life with it. That's what I would say. I'm so scared. I'm all alone since stopping all contact with family. Being crippled is not helping. Any advice on becoming more settled? It's hard, man, but listen, what I would say is the things that I've said in the previous things to other people. You need to find, somebody said it here, look, find something in your life that fulfills you, work or a hobby. If you've had to go no contact because you had no other choice, then there's still a hole. Don't let that hole fill up with crap. Yeah. Fill it up with your stuff, your needs, the things that you didn't get to do as a result. Try and be playful. Try and reconnect with the child in you, right? What do they want? What do they need? How do you get some of that childlike wonder back? What needs didn't you have met as a child that you could go out and meet and get met? And this could be things like you weren't touched much as a child, yeah? So you might start thinking, you know what, I like to go out and get some massage or something like that. Like these are the things that you should be able to do. I really don't like to point towards something that I'm selling off the back of any question, but because it doesn't feel right to me. But Inner You, you can sign up to the waiting list on my website for Inner You, and I take you through a journey to work all this stuff out, and so that you can build a relationship with your inner child and become their champion. That's a 6-week course. There's loads of pre-recorded stuff on there. We do a live session on Zoom once a week, and you get some space to share if you'd like to do that. And the weekly exercises, work out who you are today, why you show up in the way that you do, look at your past relationships, and then we go and get your inner child so you can become their champion. It's £99 for that, for the 6 weeks. I've tried to make it as accessible as I possibly can. And I think for what you get in that, it is really good value. It's a big investment. For a lot of people, I know that, but I'm not somebody out here selling these courses for £2,000. Listening to you makes me so emotional. Hearing this stuff really helps. Yeah, and look, I'm going to finish on this because I got to jump, but something that I would say, right, and this has been really important to me. I lost my dad when I was 9. My dad was an alcoholic, died when I was 9, and I'm still close with my mum. I have a loving, good relationship with my mum. I do this toxic parent chat stuff that I do for a number of different reasons, but put it this way, I've supported a lot of people in this situation, and I have people very, very close to me who are going through this stuff. And I think you'd all recognise that I couldn't have the kind of knowledge and understanding of it that I do without knowing somebody or some people very close to me with it. But what I try to do is just highlight what a difficult situation. And, you know, I get a lot of people saying your advice is disgusting and, you know, horrible and all of that. And I understand why they say that, but if you listen to what I say, I actually don't give advice. Unless people directly ask for it, and then I give the best advice I can. But actually what I try to do is just get curious about these situations and try and explore them with some love and compassion that I think the people going through these situations deserve. So I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate it. I love doing these. And I hope, look, I think they help. I think they're good for people going through this situation, particularly to see the comments. And that's what I love about the videos that I post, is that lots of people come in and share stuff in the comments, and I think it really helps people to feel less alone. So, you know, I appreciate the way that everybody else shows up, not just me. So thank you. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. Take care. I'll see you all again on the next one.